Good morning once again, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining the inaugural webinar in the OPA Open Science webinar series. You're very welcome to the webinar series, which we hope is going to carry out through the coming years as we implement our project under which the OPA Open Science webinar series is. The project titled Unlocking Potential, Elevating Open Institutional Repositories in Africa for Global Impact, which we Ubuntu Alliance are implementing in collaboration with our member national research and education networks, the NRINs, with support from Invest in Open Infrastructure through a fund that they call the Network Adoption Fund. The project is aimed at strengthening the people, the infrastructure, the communities that are needed to advance open science across Eastern and Southern Africa in particular. A core part of the project is the capacity building programs, which are taking place, which some of you have already been a part of, and some are going to be a part of in the coming capacity building trainings that are going to take place, which for starters aim to train 560 librarians in modern repository management and metadata curation. That's 35 librarians per country in our 16 member countries or 16 member NRENs, which comes up to 560 librarians. But not only that, in order to complete the ecosystem itself, we'll also be training 75 NREN system engineers who are going to be mainly in charge of establishing and maintaining repository infrastructure, particularly on DSpace. And further, we're going to train 480 librarians and researchers as institutional data management champions. These activities are being implemented across the 16 member countries. And as I said, some of you have already been part of them, and some are going to be a part of them as they happen. Around this, we're making sure that there's a multilingual learning resource. Trainings are being delivered in both English and in French. There's going to be video on demand courses that are going to come out as part of the project. It's a 3-year project, so some of these activities are going to come out or are going to be implemented as we move further into the project. And also there's going to be a regional help desk and an African community of practice for librarians, which some of you, again, are already a part of, and others are going to join, maybe even through this webinar. As I said, I'm going to share all the links in the chat. A central component of the project as well is the development of DSpace as a managed cloud service, or what we call DSpace as a service. The main idea with this is to remove the burden of infrastructure from the institution by providing the infrastructure at national research and education network level and providing the DSpace at the NREN level and allowing universities to create repositories in the DSpace at the NREN level as a service that is provided by the NRENs. So this will reduce the cost and the technical burden of individual institutions establishing and maintaining their own servers. Those who have experience in DSpace know how expensive it is to have all the integrations and also the requirements that are there from the technical standpoint, an infrastructure standpoint, even a human capacity standpoint. So we're taking that burden away from the institutions themselves so that, or rather that hurdle. And so this is going to be implemented while supporting shared technical expertise, metadata harmonization, regional data hosting, and long-term repository sustainability. So institutions will still retain the ownership and responsibility for their content policies, deposits, and metadata on the repositories, but then they'll be benefiting at the same time from the reliable infrastructure and technical support of the national research and education networks. So when we say OPA, the OPA in the OPA Open Science Webinar Series stands for Open Pan-African Repository, which is the digital open access repository that's going to be implemented by Ubuntu Alliance. And hosted by Ubuntu Alliance. It's being created as we speak under this same project, and this will serve as the continental discovery and aggregation layer within this ecosystem, where you have the DSpace as a service, and above that is going to be OPA as an aggregator repository. So it will not replace the institutional repositories at all, but then it will simply harvest and enrich the metadata from the repositories across Africa to provide a platform for direct deposits for research, publications, and datasets as well, and also make African scholarship more visible, discoverable, citable, and reusable, and what have you. So the webinar series itself As part of the project, it creates a space for researchers, librarians, repository managers, data stewards, innovators, enrich teams, policy actors, and also just open science partners to exchange knowledge and practical experiences that support these wider project goals that I have mentioned. So today's recording is going to be shared. We're going to create a playlist on UbuntuNet TV so that you can easily access it. And once the OPA platform is ready, we're also going to archive the slides from today's webinar on there, and we're going to communicate and share after that. So feel free once again to introduce yourself in the chat, your institution and your country, where you're from. And you may also submit questions through the Q&A throughout the webinar, and then at the end, we're going to give a chance for the Q&A. So that our presenter can then answer those questions. So today we are joined by Johanssen Obanda, who is the Community Engagement Manager at Crossref, which I'm sure some of you are familiar with, and he will touch more on what Crossref does in today's webinar. And he joined Crossref in 2023 to work with the Crossref ambassadors to effectively engage their communities and support Crossref's outreach initiatives, particularly in Africa. He's passionate about building an inclusive research ecosystem where researchers across the globe can easily access scientific knowledge and make meaningful connections. So without further ado, Johanssen, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Harold. Thank you everyone for making time to join this webinar today. My name is Johanssen Obanda, as Harold mentioned, and I'm part of community team at Crossref. And today I'll be talking about strengthening metadata quality and research discoverability. To start my presentation, I will introduce Crossref, but I'll also speak about metadata and why it matters for institutional repositories, and also touch on Research Nexus and how connected metadata improves discoverability, and DSpace, Crossref integration, which is a recent development and opportunities for institutional repositories, also using participation reports to understand and improve metadata completeness. So with a quick introduction to Crossref, we are a nonprofit and community-governed organization, and our mission is to make scholarly communications better. We make research objects easy to find, cite, link, assess, and reuse. And how we do that, we run an open infrastructure to link research objects, entities, and actions, and creating a lasting and reusable scholarly record that underpins open science. And together with our more than 25,000 members in 167 countries, we drive metadata exchange and support 2.1 billion monthly API queries, facilitating global research communication for the benefit of society. And how do we do this? More specifically, organizations who publish scholarly content join Crossref and commit to membership terms. We provide them with a DOI prefix, and they use this DOI prefix to create unique DOIs for each item that they publish. And each DOI works as a locator for that published item. And that means that if you paste it into a browser, then it will resolve to a URL that you included in your metadata record. But more importantly than that, the DOI can act as a metadata container, which means that it contains metadata records in a consistent machine-readable format or a JSON file that we're going to see later. And this is openly shared with the whole global scholarly community through our free APIs that we'll also explore. And anybody that is able to use Crossref APIs to access this metadata can access your information as well, or your content metadata. So organizations need to be members of Crossref to create metadata records that identify, describe, and locate their work. And you can create and steward rich metadata records, adding relationships, provenance, contributor, and funding information, also ensuring accuracy and persistence over time. And by doing so, you are adding to and benefiting from reciprocal connections among a global network of research objects, and you're co-creating a research nexus for the benefit of society, including future generations. Crossref membership is open to all organizations that produce scholarly and professional materials and content. but cost and technical capabilities can be barriers to joining. And in that case, we aim to reduce those through a number of ways. The sponsor program, for example, is for members who do not have the resources or capabilities to work directly with and pay Crossrefs. More than half of our members, there'll be about 12,000 members have joined via a sponsor, which means that they don't pay Crossref a membership fee, and they receive technical support and expertise locally through their sponsor. Yeah, some sponsors may charge you for their services, so it's important that you clarify their terms before joining. But as well, some sponsors already have a membership model in the way that they organize their work, like consortia libraries, for example, in a country, and then they would add supporting local members to deposit metadata in the services that they support their members with. But we also have the GEM program, which has a wide coverage in Africa for organizations that are based in Africa and also in other parts of the world. And the GEM program, it offers relief from membership fees and content registration fees in least economically advantaged countries in the world. And members in GEM eligible countries do not pay Crossref membership fees or content registration fees. But as well, other members from non-GEM eligible countries can join through independent membership, and if they others, they can also join through a sponsor, and through independent membership or membership tiers start from $200 every year, and all the way to those that have more annual revenue or turnout, and that's how the tiers are mostly decided. And now we'll look at the scale of Crossref. So Crossref was founded in the year 2000 by a few scientific societies and publishers who are at the same time seeking an efficient way to link references in journal articles. Today we have over 25,000 members from 167 countries. 51% of our members are based in Asia, and 40% are universities or scholar-led. 6% of our members are based in GEM-eligible countries, and we're increasingly having members from Africa, from Asia as well, from Latin America, and we're also having an increase of sponsors in the GEM countries, so sponsors who don't pay, for example, to membership fees or content registration fees, but they still support the members in the countries to be able to use Crossref services much easily, and also as well to improve their metadata. The GEM refers to our Global Equitable Membership Program that I already talked about, and together our members have registered over 180 million metadata records with DOIs that are resolved 1.4 billion times per month, and there are 2.1 billion queries of our metadata each month by hundreds of thousands of systems that are ingesting and reusing this metadata. And the works in our metadata corpus are now connected with over 2 billion citation links. We're now on to metadata and why it matters for institutional repositories. Metadata basically is data that provides information about other data that, but not the content of the data itself. Yes, so it basically describes what you're registering or describes the content itself. And we interact with data with metadata every day. Maybe, for example, metadata about a particular song might be the artist, for example, the genre of that song, and the length of that song, and a couple other things about the song, but rather than the song itself. So taking that thought further, scholarly metadata refers to metadata in relation to research outputs. This slide shows the types of content that can be registered with Crossref. Most people know that DOIs are used for journal articles, but Crossref accepts other types of content too, which are listed on this slide. Each content type we support has a unique set of required and recommended metadata, and this metadata describes the content and provides context about the content that is being registered. And there's a diagram here which show the relationship between a specific content and also a different metadata. When we think of scholarly record, it is made up of all the outputs, the inputs, and the connections, and the metadata about them. For example, for a journal article, a journal article might be building on information from a data set. And a journal article might have been developed from a preprint or some versions, previous versions before it was finally published. And also a journal article can be presented in a conference as a conference proceeding, for example, and then registered as a package as a conference proceeding later. But then there are also other information about this journal article, for example, funding information about it, the title and the references about it, and then the other different relationships with this journal article as well have their own metadata as well. And that's how you see the relationship between a scholarly record and the entire ecosystem. It's not just itself as an object, but it creating more relationships helps to tell a more complete story of a piece of content. So recommended metadata or different types of metadata, for example, or the basic or important metadata that your article needs to have. For example, titles, dates, author name, substracts, DOIs, and location URL. But in addition to this, it's recommended to add more metadata about your piece of record, because these metadata exist in a machine-readable format, and the more metadata that you provide, then the more different systems and websites or machines can use this data to find your work and to reuse it or to make assessment about it. So other information like ORCID or affiliation and affiliation IDs, post-publication updates like retractions or corrections, funding information or grant information, relationships, and also subject-specific metadata, for example, clinical trial information. And the essence of the metadata, for example, is one is discoverability, because the more metadata you include about a piece of content, the easier it is for others to search and discover, from researchers to organizations who use Crossref metadata to build their own tools and services for the research community. Metadata is also important for research integrity. It can act as a signal of trustworthiness. It's also important for the reproducibility, because researchers need to be able to build upon each other's work. When they can cite your work, when they can add your work also as a reference, for example, that really helps to show how a piece of work has evolved or a certain topic has evolved over time. It's also important for reporting and assessment. Metadata can help organizations to track the outputs of what they have invested in, provide benchmarking information, demonstrate compliance with funder mandates, and decide what research to fund. So including metadata such as affiliation, or ROR IDs, ORCID IDs, funding and grant information, also links to preprints, for example, help with this. Now over to Research Nexus and how connected metadata improve discoverability. The metadata that we've talked about over time is the foundation of Research Nexus, which is the vision to which we aspire. It is a rich and reusable open network of relationships that connects research organizations, people, things, and actions. And it is a scholarly record that the global community can build on forever for the benefit of society. At the center of these are all the research objects and the actors of the scholarly ecosystem. You can see ORCID over there, datasite. You can see Crossref itself, ROR. You can see the other things like blogs and books. But you can see these are the all players and systems, and then we can as well see the circles around them represent how these objects relate to each other and how they act upon each other. For example, you can see a piece of information can be created, and after it is being created, you can see that there's the authors, you can see who is involved in it, and then after that, it can be edited or posted or published, for example, and you can see information about the publisher. You can see it can be edited or commented upon by the community. It can be mentioned elsewhere sometimes and be responded to. It can be used, for example, be translated, be cited again. Also, funding information can happen about it. So a lot of things can happen about one piece of record. And for that reason, then you find that these metadata, because we make it openly accessible via Crossref API, then it can be used by the whole community to for the benefit of what I already mentioned, for assessment, for discoverability, reusability, and more. And so when you submit rich metadata, people can search based on any criteria that they prefer. But if you provided good metadata, then they can find your work easily. For general users, just the basic search with Crossref.org is enough, but it still queries our or API and brings some information that is relevant to your search criteria. In the background, this is how this would work. We'll make this metadata available, as I said, through our APIs and public data files, which means that people and machines can incorporate it into their research tools and services. At the same time, we collect and openly distribute metadata as part of the ever-growing Research Nexus. It is, I wouldn't assume that everyone understands the API and using it. Maybe everyone is interested in using metadata, but then it is like a waiter. You are seated here. You ask for a certain type of food, and then the waiter would go to the kitchen, get the food that you need, and then bring it to you. And that's what the API does. It's like it's central to. It's more like the what a waiter does, and it just basically helps to query all the metadata that has been provided by a course of members, and then makes it available to you to use in the way that you prefer. So you can visit api.crossref.org if you prefer to use metadata for whatever purpose. We're committed to providing free, open, and as anonymous as possible access to the scholarly metadata. And how you can use these API, or like I already talked about, one that helps you to fetch information that you might need about whatever it is that already been submitted by our course of members. Information is organized into a unique resource identifier, which is a URL as well. These are unique addresses that identify and locate a resource. Also, all requests from the client to the server must contain all of the information necessary to understand and complete the request. And we won't log into a portal to get access to data, and there are no stored sessions. So you can just access it via a browser URL. And this is how it looks like, for example. So you will see the yellow part is the server part, which basically is what enables the query to complete successfully. But then the endpoint is what types of resources you're trying to find. And then parameters is basically the criteria that you're setting to find the types of work that you want to find. Yeah, so we have these in the documentation. There's a list of different locations or endpoints on our API that contain data of interest. So try to categorize things already for you to make it easier for those who are trying to query Crossref metadata. I'm going to show you a basic example some data that you can retrieve from some of these endpoints. And maybe not practically, but just if I go to the next slide, this is how this operation would look like. So we want to paste something into the website. So this will be made available for you. You can follow, you can try to do it along as I'm explaining. So when you paste this link, this link api.crossref.org/types onto your website, then you get a result that looks like this. You get about 30 works that are registered with 30 different work types that are registered with Crossref currently. But as well, you can find, for example, journals or member by member ID or funders as well, or prefixes, and you can query by different types by just making sure that you complete the basic 3 elements to complete a query record. And then this is displayed as a JSON format, and then this is the essence of contributing robust metadata, because with this format, then it allows for machines and different systems to query Crossref metadata and to make use of it in different forms that they would like to. Yeah, so if you're just starting to understand how to use Crossref metadata, we recommend that you start with the metadata search or funder search, or even simple text query, for example. Yeah, and if you're exploring or you want to do more, you can take an in-depth interactive documentation for REST API, which is found at api.crossref.org. And that is maybe if you're comfortable with tar or TR data files, and you can download our latest annual public data file. But if you are a heavy user, then you want to subscribe to Metadata Plus, which is a paid for service for to allow you to use Crossref metadata, for example, in a customized fashion. Now I want to talk about DSpace and Crossref integration and opportunities for institutional repositories. Yeah, so DSpace repositories already assign persistent handles to repository items. With Crossref, institutions do not need to invent an entirely new identifier scheme. Instead, you can use your existing or you can use your Crossref DOI prefix together with your existing DSpace handle identifier to construct the DOI. For example, if the repository handle is 1912/1099 and the institution's Crossref prefix is 10.1575, the resulting DOI becomes 10.1575/1912/1099. That's basically your DOI and your handle. The DOI then resolves to the repository's existing handle URL. And this makes DOI implementation straightforward while preserving existing repository identifiers and workflows. It's recommended to assign Crossref DOIs to original author accepted manuscripts, but avoid registering duplicate DOIs for both the author accepted manuscripts and the version of record, since they may be cited in the same way. So some good news is that DSpace and Crossref are now connected. And this is an important milestone. It was, I think, in June that early June that the DSpace 10 was released. So previously, institutions using DSpace had to build their own workflow, or after publishing or submitting or making available the metadata and the content on DSpace, on the DSpace instance, they needed to come over to Crossref, do a manual metadata upload or registration through different tools that we have, or through a direct XML upload. But beginning with DSpace 10, repositories can now register Crossref DOIs directly from DSpace, and that is making repository workflows much simpler and more sustainable. So what is the change, for example? So we have mostly is repositories have or metadata, for example, is local, or repository by itself. Maybe it's decentralized and local. We have a local repository, unless maybe someone has the exact handle, or maybe for example, then they wouldn't easily find the work that is archived in the repository. Metadata was stored locally, and then as well, repository, there's only the repository identifier, and then there's manual workflows and the limited linking. But right now, with the integration, you can connect the repository output to global connected repository. You can also, your metadata is shared with the global scholarly infrastructure, and we also have matching projects to match metadata to relevant resources or relationships that exist. For example, your repository might have funding information existing just as a string about, like, maybe Wellcome Trust, for example. But now with our matching project, then we can match that string to the actual funder identifier through our ROR, and that funder as well is able now to see a better picture of what other articles or research output that they have funded that are a result of their funding that they wouldn't have been able to see before. And so that is also quite an important milestone to be able to share with the global scholarly infrastructure, or with these metadata, and to make it more usable, not just within the institution. Yeah, and then as well, persistent Crossref DOI, you're able to add DOIs to the repository work as well. And also, you're able to automate DOI registration. You don't have to go out of your DSpace to register DOI through another system. And since this is just the first of this, and from June, we are encouraging a lot of feedback for what doesn't work well, to be able to improve these service or an integration. We also, through this integration as well, you connect your outputs to authors, funders, institutions, citations, and research outputs across the world. And this enables you to enrich your metadata further with what I already shared. So you building richer repository metadata beyond DOIs, not just having DOIs, for example. It's not sufficient, or you don't get the full benefit of using of integrating the scholarly ecosystem or the global scholarly infrastructure by just with the DOI. Since if you don't add metadata to it, then it all ends at the DOI, and it isn't very useful for you and also for the rest of the scholarly community. And so all these metadata elements that I had shared before, you can add references or submit your references, abstracts, translations, versions, relationships that exist, funding information, licenses, if they're there as well, all the contributor information as well. A university may want to add a copy or accepted manuscripts of a faculty member's journal article to its institutional repository. This is I'm trying to explain a use case. And that article, for example, has a DOI, or it also maybe has a metadata registered with Crossref by the publisher. So in this case, instead of maybe doing this anew or trying to register something that is already existing, what you can do is you can do a live import through your DSpace instance. So live import is a feature that is generally not for newly written articles that have never been published before. It is for works that already exist somewhere else and already house metadata that can be harvested. And so through DSpace's live import, you can query the metadata. For example, after the author uploads the PDF, the repository staff enters a DOI, and the DSpace searches Crossref and other different databases, and then it populates the record with title, author, journal, volume, issue, pages, publication dates, DOI. These are automatically populated, and then the repository record is created without having to create a duplicate DOI. But for what I shared earlier was that you can submit new records to Crossref through DSpace as well, since the integration exists. For repository managers that are depositing works that have already been published elsewhere, DSpace can retrieve existing metadata from Crossref, and it reduces manual entry and improving metadata quality. So repositories play a key role in making research outputs visible, trusted, and usable. And by using metadata, they significantly increase the visibility, quality, and impact of the records that they host. So Crossref's metadata infrastructure supports this in several ways. Firstly, the repositories can enrich their records by pulling metadata from Crossref using the REST API, and there is detailed information about it. But as well, the information that they can pull, for example, is funder information, license stamps, and abstracts, and most of the times it does this efficiently and accurately. So in practice, you can query your Crossref API using identifiers like DOIs, and this is something that through the live import, the DSpace instance can do for you if you're not very technical to be able to do this querying over Crossref API by yourself. I would like to now share some Crossref services that support repositories. Reference linking is one of them. Reference linking enables researchers to follow a link from the reference list to other publications, helping them to make connections and discover new things. So if you are publishing maybe a thesis or a dissertation, for example, adding the DOI links of the references is important. So we have tools that help with that. For example, simple text query that you can copy paste all the references that the author has added to a simple text query, and it will query our API and find the DOIs that relate to these works that have been referenced, and then it will bring for you a clean list of the whole citation, including the links of the DOIs, and this allows people to easily follow someone's work from the reference list to another. Cited by is also an important one that shows how research has been received by the community, and by displaying the number of times it has been cited and by linking to the citing content. And this is it's important that you register your references as well, which means like all the references that is attached to your work, adding them and then submitting them or depositing your references so that it shows that your work is citing this one, and that will ping the other user that it is that they're being cited by this particular author or particular publisher, and that helps as well with the citation counts that you see. Similarity check as well helps as a plagiarism checker that you might be using. It's made available by Turnitin's Authenticate for our members. And then Crossmark is helps you to see if there's a change that has happened with a particular paper or a retraction or a correction. So finally, I want to finish with these with the participation reports and understanding and improving metadata completeness. So we have talked about metadata and its importance, and that richer metadata helps your content. It's for the benefit of your your journal, of your university, of your faculty, of your library, and also for the benefit of everyone else that is interested in looking for building on metadata or on knowledge that is already existing, and also for open science reasons. And we just saw in the previous slides that richer metadata, the richer your metadata is, means that the more metadata elements you include basically, means that the more or the better chances are that the content is going to appear in one of the downstream tools, and therefore richer metadata increases the discoverability of your content. But it's not necessarily that easy to find how rich that is by using APIs or looking at the XML like that. So some people find it useful to look at something visually appealing like what I'm showing in my screen. So if you're here and you go to crossref.org/members/prep, you can try to find your university, because like your organizations already, you might be part of a university that's already submitting metadata to Crossref. Maybe you have a publishing arm or a faculty that is active in publishing, or a library that is publishing actually. But we encourage organizations to join as a unit, for example, as one university, even if they have different publishing arms, like a library or another faculty, for example, unless maybe that is an actual preference to do it that way. So you go to this, and then you will try to search for your organization, institute or faculty, or if you know that you're part of you're a member of Crossref, then you can actually search by the name that you know that you've registered with, and then it will auto-populate, and then you will see the next item. For example, this is for eLife. If you search for eLife, we see that eLife is a good example to use, as they are having a lot of completed or metadata completed, which means it's they have a lot of metadata that is exposed to be used by systems and tools that are using this metadata for different purposes. And there are 11 metadata types that are listed with percentages or registered content of registered content, and has certain metadata elements. These are elements that we consider important to make the content more useful and discoverable. And these include references, ROR IDs, ORCID identifiers, funder information, URLs for licenses and similarity check services, abstracts, crossmark, if an organization uses these services, and affiliation metadata. We currently support 3 institution identifiers, ROR, Wikidata, and ISNI, and each one has a percentage displayed next to it. So you can see, for example, that eLife is out of 16,000 records, they have about 98% of them have references, and then has crossmark enabled or even abstract. And this makes it easier for someone to find their work if they look based on this criteria. Yes, so to finish up, metadata, we've had recent metadata updates. The latest is a schema 5.5 update, which supports credit contributor roles for standardized author contribution statements, because an author might not just be an author. Maybe they helped in curating or doing some software work or some investigation or a couple other things, and want to better describe what the contributors of these works are. So, and we have multiple contributor roles per contributor, so it's maybe just not an author, but it could be like an author that is doing this and this and multiple other things, and you can be able to add. We also have new content types, so scholarly blogs and posters have been added to our posted content, and then we have reports, dissertations, and working papers have now been upgraded or moved to independent content types or dedicated content types. So you can register reports or dissertations as a type of paper. So, and dissertations also like commonly a content type among institutional repositories. Yeah, and then we also have support expanded for clinical trial information. So why these matters for repository managers, It's about cleaning and connecting your data. And for researchers, it improves visibility for funders. They benefit from tracking research outputs. Ultimately, this supports the FAIR principles and the broader open science movement that we're all part of. Thank you very much for your audience, and I'm happy to take any questions if there are any. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Johanssen, for such an in-depth presentation on Crossref and also on the benefits of metadata, and also how some use cases on how it has benefited other institutions and how the audience can also apply it. We do have several questions, and fortunately, we have about 12 minutes to cover those. So I'll start with the ones that are in the Q&A section. Forgive me if I butcher your name, Lalanirina Jean, who says, would there be other support options when enrins use DSpace like today's presentations? I think that one's more for Ubuntu Alliance and the project. So the project will provide support and training for enrins to install and manage DSpace as a service, which I had alluded to in the introduction. So the support will be there, and also the webinar series is going to continue for the duration of the project, and webinars such as these will be conducted, or rather will be hosted, and also will feature other organizations that are working within open science spaces, innovations, policy, and so on and so forth. And the recordings will be shared via UbuntuNet TV, which I shared in the chat. So the resources are going to be there for support. Letsatsi Lekoa, who's the CEO of Lesren, the Lesotho Enren, says, does the Crossref have similarity check tool to use, or which tools you can advise to use? I think that one's for you, Johanssen.
Yeah, we have a similarity check service to use. Similarity check service is a reduced rate access to authenticate, which is a tool by Turnitin. So we have it is paid even if you're from a GEM country, because it is not our own service. It is provided by Turnitin. It's Turnitin's authenticate service. Yeah, so it is available for members. And if you're a sponsored member, for example, you can get it or agree with your with the sponsoring organization to make it available for your use. Yeah, thank you.
We also have another question that says, is Crossref free or for paying? I think you can clarify on that, Johanssen.
So Crossref is sustained by the membership fees and the content registration fees. And I don't know whoever asked if it was from which country, but if you go to crossref.org/member and /membership, you can find that we have several countries, and if this is an African audience, we have most of the countries. Probably your country will be part of the GEM program. The essence of the GEM program is to allow for organizations to join without the hurdle of fees, if that is a problem for them. And the GEM eligible countries, mostly like in Eastern Central Africa, East Central and Southern Africa. Only South Africa is not part of the GEM program, but the others can join Crossref and register Crossref register metadata without having to pay any fees. But membership at Crossref starts from $200 every year, and then about $1 per content item that is registered, and that has been reduced to 95 cents per content item that is being registered to Crossref. And also, as well, there's no fees for backfires for if you have content for 3 years, 3 years back and more. You don't have to pay for any updates that you want to share with Crossref. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Johanssen. There's also another question from Lillian in the chat, who says, we are members of Crossref, but have not quite well understood how to exploit it in terms of institutional repository maximization. Is there any support outside this webinar? I want to know how to effectively use Crossref capabilities in relation to our institutional repository.
Yeah, great. So I think we have welcome to Crossref webinars. You will see those as Your content, your organization's contact should receive invitation to getting started at Crossref webinars. And getting started at Crossref webinars help you to understand how to start to identify a content registration method. I'm not sure which tool that you use. Some use OJS, and there is an integration with other OJS. There's DSpace integration right now. You can explore that, and you can as well register content using Metadata Manager Crossref, which is also a simple tool to register records manually. So if you have your contents ready and metadata for them ready, you need to visit Crossref, manage your records, or manage.crossref.org, and then you will be able to start registering your metadata. Yeah.
I've also shared a link to the Getting Started at Crossref page. So in case you'd like to have that.
Thank you.
Yes, the presentation will be shared. I see that there are some individuals who are asking the presentation will be shared. The presentation will be shared following the webinar. We still do have a couple of minutes for some questions, but in case you missed the introduction of the webinar, this webinar is part of the overall project which Ubuntu Alliance is implementing with its member National Research and Education Networks, and with support from IOI. Lean Jibri raised a hand. Would you like to ask your question, Lean? Lean, go ahead. Unmute and go ahead. Go ahead, Lynn. Okay, so yes, this is part of the overall project that Ubuntu Alliance is implementing with its member national research education networks across the 16 countries, and it is supported by investing in open infrastructure. This is the first of many webinars in the webinar series, and part of the project as well is the establishment of the Open Pan-African repository, which is going to play an aggregator role for the DSpace as a service that is going to be established under the project, whereby National Research and Education Networks will get infrastructure support and capacity support to provide DSpace as a service to member institutions, hence removing the need for member institutions to have their own DSpace. Rather, they're going to open repositories which they will fully own on the DSpace as a service provided by the enrich. Ubuntu Alliance will play the aggregator role through the Open Pan-African repository, aggregating the metadata at regional level, hence providing an additional layer of discoverability. Also part of the project is the training of 560 librarians in modern metadata creation and repository management. Some of the trainings which some have already been part of in this group, and also establishing a community of practice, which some are also already a part of, and I have shared in the chat. Just as well, the project will see the training of 480 data champions, open data champions across the region, and it is going to the project is going to run for 3 years. So this is the first in the Open Science webinar series, and we hope that we will have you in the next webinar, which is taking place next week, Friday, the 31st of July, and it's going to feature ORCID. I shared also the registration link in the chat, so please feel free to register for that as well. Allow me also to mention the UbuntuNet Connect conference, which is the annual conference for UbuntuNet Alliance, which brings together the entire community of research and education in Eastern and Southern Africa. It's going to take place on the 30th and 31st of October this year in Malawi, where the Ubuntu Alliance Secretariat is also located, hosted by the Malawi Research and Education Network. It's the 19th conference that we're running, and it is coming in our 20th year. So we're going to be celebrating our 20th year in Malawi this year alongside UbuntuNet Connect. So please register for the conference and attend the conference. It's going to be one to Remember, you can get the information also in the chat as I have shared, and we will definitely share following this webinar. Johanssen, thank you so much for joining us today, and also thank you so much for making a presentation on Crossref. We appreciate you sharing your insights, and if there's any need for further communications, we'll be sure to link you with the participants in the chat. I think
Thank you.
having reached that far, let me thank the audience, and also let me thank yes, the audience for participating in today's webinar. Any final additions, Johanssen, before we close?
Thank you very much for this, Harold, and also Buntnet, and thank you very much for your audience, everyone, and I wish you a great rest of your days.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.